biggest stars of the 70s. But some of the decade's greatest songs came from artists who were never supposed to change music.
Great God in heaven, you know I love you.
One was written by a 17-year-old high school student. Another came from a college band trying to impress local radio. One became famous because the lead singer stepped away from the microphone. Another created one of the most recognizable instrumental hooks in history, almost by accident. There were songs that blended rock and soul, songs that defined the California sound, and songs born from heartbreak that still sound timeless today. For a few unforgettable years, these records were everywhere. They filled American highways, living rooms, jukeboxes, and transistor radios across the country. Today, we're counting down 10 forgotten 70s classics that once ruled American airwaves. 10. Vehicle by the Ides of March.
I'm a stranger in the black sedan, won't you hop inside my car?
Here is something most people do not realize about one of the heaviest brass anthems of 1970. It was written by a 17-year-old high school student. When Jim Peter Reg penned Vehicle, he was not trying to craft a massive commercial hit for a record label. He was just a teenager pouring his frustration into music, trying to process his own life. But the track exploded, eventually peaking at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Recorded in Chicago, the song was deeply influenced by the horn-driven power of bands like Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Yet it possessed a raw, specific urgency that perfectly captured the transitional period, right before the polished era of disco took over. The vocals are intense, driving forward with an almost frantic energy that demanded the listener's attention.
Great God in heaven, you know I love you.
The Ides of March delivered a signature brass arrangement that came to define the rock fusion movement of the early 70s.
By now I'm sure you know that I love you.
And they did it entirely on their own terms, without a massive corporate machine dictating their sound. It stands today as one of the most successful self-produced tracks to emerge from the independent rock scene of that era. The band managed to bottle lightning in a recording studio, capturing a gritty, propulsive energy that simply could not be faked. Sometimes the song you write by pure accident ends up being the one that defines your entire legacy. 9. Brandy, You're a Fine Girl by Looking Glass. There are certain tracks that immediately transport you to a specific geographic place. When the opening chords of Brandy play, most listeners assume they are hearing a seasoned folk rock standard straight out of Southern California. The sun-drenched acoustic guitars just feel like the Pacific Coast, but that geography is a complete illusion. This was actually a blue-eyed soul experiment put together by a college band from Rutgers University. In 1972, the members of Looking Glass recorded the track with a very simple goal in mind. They just wanted to impress local radio DJs across New Jersey. Instead, they ended up with a number 1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100. The production used a highly sophisticated layering of acoustic guitars and strings. That layered approach gave the track a polished, distinctly West Coast atmosphere. Despite being recorded and produced right in the mid-Atlantic, it remains the definitive barroom storytelling song of the early 70s. The narrative paints such a vivid picture of a lonely harbor town, a devoted barmaid, and a sailor bound to the sea. You can almost smell the salt air and the spilled whiskey on the floorboards. The characters felt so real that listeners across the country felt like they actually knew them. When a band stops trying to sound like a manufactured hit and just tells a thoroughly human story, the world usually stops to listen. 8. Wildfire by Michael Martin Murphey.
A whirlwind by your side.
Think about the musical landscape of 1975 for a second. The country was moving steadily toward the peak of the disco era. Nightclubs were pumping out heavy bass lines, and radio stations were transitioning to faster, synthesized beats. And right in the middle of that major cultural shift, a deeply tragic song about a ghost horse saving a girl in a blizzard climbed all the way to number 3 on the pop charts. Michael Martin Murphey had struggled for years to convince his label to release Wildfire. Music executives felt that a slow, traditional Western ballad had absolutely no place on modern pop radio formats. They told him it would never work. They could not have been more wrong. The track opens with a haunting, classical-style piano introduction. For many who grew up listening to the radio in that era, those first few notes serve as a Pavlovian trigger. It instantly brings back memories of cold, dark winters in the mid-70s, huddled near a heater with the radio playing softly. The song completely defied conventional industry wisdom. It is a quiet study of tension and release, with Murphy's understated vocal delivery letting the eerie narrative do the heavy lifting. It proved that deeply atmospheric storytelling within the country rock genre could still dominate pop radio, provided the melody was compelling enough to hold the listener in its grip. People connected with the melancholic beauty of the arrangement and the sadness of the lyrics. Because some songs do not just climb the charts, they create an entirely new emotional space for the audience to inhabit. That same emotional depth found its way onto the airwaves again just a year later, but this time wrapped in a completely different disguise. 7. Shannon by Henry Gross. If you caught this track playing softly on an AM station in the summer of 1976, you probably assumed you were listening to the Beach Boys.
I hardly know what to say.
The lush, multi-tracked vocal harmonies practically drip with that classic California surf rock sound. But the subject matter was far heavier than sunshine and ocean waves. Shannon was actually written as a heartfelt tribute to the passing of a real Irish setter. Henry Gross was deeply inspired after a poignant conversation with Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys, who had recently lost his own dog. The resulting track reached number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100. It utilized a stunning falsetto vocal performance and rich, layered production to convey a sense of pure, unfiltered grief.
How much we really miss her.
The contrast between the upbeat, breezy musical style and the sorrowful narrative is exactly what makes the recording so compelling. It represents the absolute pinnacle of a specific sadcore ballad movement that permeated the airwaves that year. Listeners connected with the vulnerability of the performance, even if they didn't know the specific details of the story, because sometimes the most profound sorrow is delivered through the most beautiful, soaring melodies. 6. Magnet and Steel by Walter Egan.
My secrets to reveal.
There are songs you recognize in seconds, even if the title escapes your memory the moment the music stops. Magnet and Steel peaked at number 8 in 1978 and became the definitive embodiment of the late 70s California sound. The track possesses a mysterious, almost dreamy atmosphere that pulls you in immediately, and there is a very specific reason for that ethereal quality. Stevie Nicks provided uncredited background vocals on the recording. Walter Egan wrote the song specifically for Nicks. He was trying to capture the literal magnetic pull he felt when he first met her, and you can hear that quiet obsession in the groove. The production was heavily shaped by Lindsey Buckingham, who co-produced the album and brought his signature, meticulously crafted studio techniques to the session. You hear it in the crisp snare and the rolling, hypnotic bass line. It is a song that feels like a late-night drive down the Pacific Coast Highway.
For you are a magnet, and
The blend of Egan's lead vocal with Nicks's haunting harmonies created a texture that radio programmers simply could not resist playing. It reminds us that the right collaboration, even an uncredited one, can elevate a simple pop song into a lasting cultural mood. 5. Fooled Around and Fell in Love by Elvin Bishop. Here is what most people do not realize about one of the biggest slow dance hits of 1976. The man whose name is on the record didn't actually sing the lead vocal. Elvin Bishop was a respected, gritty blues rock guitarist. When he finished writing Fooled Around and Fell in Love, he took a hard, honest look at the soulful, intensely romantic lyrics he had just penned. He realized his own raspy voice simply wasn't smooth enough to carry the emotional weight of the melody. So, he made a decision that changed everything. He handed the microphone over to his backup singer, a then unknown vocalist named Mickey Thomas. Thomas, who would later go on to front Starship, delivered a powerhouse performance that drove the track all the way to number 3 on the charts. The instrumentation underneath that vocal is remarkable. Bishop's guitar tone throughout the song is a masterclass in blues rock restraint. He showed exactly how to balance raw, stinging grit with a polished pop sensibility. The track became the quintessential slow dance anthem of the late 70s, playing at proms and weddings across the country. It is a testament to the fact that sometimes true artistic genius lies in knowing exactly when to step out of the spotlight and let someone else shine. 4. Baker Street by Jerry Rafferty. Think about the most recognizable instrumental hooks in the history of recorded music. The soaring saxophone line in Jerry Rafferty's 1978 hit Baker Street is undoubtedly near the top of that list. But here is the strange part. That famous riff was never supposed to be played on a saxophone at all. It was originally written to fill a gap where a bewildering guitar solo was scheduled to go. The problem was that Rafferty could not find a guitarist who truly understood the feeling he was trying to convey. Out of pure necessity, session saxophonist Raphael Ravenscroft was brought into the studio. He laid down the monumental brass line and was paid a mere £27 for his time. The track soared to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. The production of the song is a brilliant study in creating atmosphere. It uses heavy reverb and sweeping, atmospheric synthesizers to perfectly mimic the cold, gray loneliness of London in the 1970s. The track fundamentally changed the role of the saxophone in mainstream music. It took an instrument traditionally confined to jazz clubs and R&B rhythm sections and turned it into a massive lead rock hook. It proves that the most defining moments in a song's history are often born out of pure frustration and last-minute studio compromises. That same kind of unexpected studio magic was responsible for another major shift on the airwaves, though this time the resistance came directly from the radio stations themselves. 3. Low Down by Boz Scaggs.
Dirty low down.
When Low Down was released in 1976, it was initially met with total confusion from music directors. The track was deemed too funky for the traditional rock stations to play. At the same time, soul and R&B stations felt it was far too rock-oriented for their audiences. Boz Scaggs found himself caught perfectly in the middle of a deeply segregated radio landscape, but the groove was simply too undeniable to be ignored for long, and it eventually climbed to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. Scaggs had gone into the studio with the absolute cream of Los Angeles session musicians. These were the elite players who would eventually go on to form the band Toto. Together, they laid down a track that served as a massive breakthrough for the blue-eyed soul genre. The musicianship is staggeringly precise. The bass line alone is a masterclass in rhythm, widely studied by musicians even today for its flawless syncopation and feel. It locks into the drum pattern so tightly that you simply have to move when you hear it. Low Down fundamentally bridged the gap between the organic, earthy rock of the 1970s and the slick, highly polished production standards that would come to define the following decade. Sometimes, the music that refuses to fit neatly into a predetermined category ends up paving a brand new road for everyone else to follow. To Summer Breeze by Seals and Crofts. As the decade rolled on, production techniques grew heavier and more complex, but some artists found their absolute power in pure lightness. When Summer Breeze floats out of a speaker, the vocal harmonies are so intricate and perfectly layered that they often sound like a massive sweeping choir. But here's what most people forget. It was just a duo. Seals and Crofts took this track to number 6 on the charts in 1972, armed with little more than acoustic instruments and their perfectly matched voices. They recorded this track at the very height of their creative partnership. Their intention was singular and deeply atmospheric. They wanted to capture the literal physical sensation of a warm, humid summer afternoon. And they succeeded. The arrangement is built around the use of an acoustic 12-string guitar, which gives the song an airy, expansive texture. It feels exactly like stepping out onto a porch in mid-July. That specific, delicate sound helped to define the entire soft rock aesthetic of the era. It remains the absolute gold standard for acoustic pop. The song embodies a gentle, peaceful spirit that the early 70s desperately needed, serving as a sonic sanctuary from the turbulent news cycle. It is a quiet reminder that sometimes the softest melodies are the ones that anchor themselves most deeply in our memory. 1. Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. We arrive at the apex, a song that did not just top the Billboard Hot 100 in 1977, but essentially swallowed the American culture whole. Dreams by Fleetwood Mac was written in roughly 10 minutes. Stevie Nicks found a small, dark room in the record plant studio that was supposedly used by Sly Stone. She described the space as feeling like a black velvet cave. She sat down with a drum machine and a keyboard
And you say you want your freedom.
and simply let the melody wash over her in a trance-like state. The environment immediately outside that room was pure chaos. The band was going through a massive, highly publicized series of romantic breakups. Friendships were dissolving. Marriages were ending. The air was thick with resentment. Yet, all of that intense personal tension was funneled directly into the recording console. They took their collective heartbreak and channeled it into the most precise, ethereal performance of their entire careers. Musically, the track is built on an incredibly simple foundation. It features one of the most consistent, unyielding bass lines in rock history. Just 2 notes pulsing back and forth like a steady heartbeat. But that simplicity is a deliberate, brilliant choice. It creates a vast open space in the mix, allowing Nicks's lead vocal to float perfectly above the rhythm section. This track is a structural masterpiece of tension and release. It defines the emotional high watermark of the late 70s. It proves that the deepest personal pain can be translated into a universal sound that simply refuses to age. The airwaves of 1977 were flooded with noise, but this song cut through all of it by offering a moment of quiet, devastating reflection. Some records manage to capture a specific moment in time. Others manage to suspend time completely. We often look back at the 1970s as a decade defined by excess and noise, a time of loud fashion massive stadium tours, and cultural upheaval. But when you strip away the mythology and simply listen to the tracks that anchored the airwaves, a different truth emerges. The decade was actually defined by a quiet, melodic brilliance. These songs were never just background noise playing softly from a dashboard radio. They were the soundtrack to a generation actively finding its voice in a rapidly changing world. They offered solace, rich storytelling, and a place to escape when things got too heavy. Because some songs become hits, but others define an entire moment in the life of everyone who lived it.